7.8 earthquake on the San Andreas, and that would rock Southern California.
Researchers Dr. Evan Solomon says it's the highest liquid leaking rate ever recorded on a subduction zone.
8:21 here on the air. We're experiencing very strong shaking. Wow. I think we need to get under the desk.
Earthquakes and tsunamis are two of our planet's most powerful and destructive natural phenomena. They can cause widespread devastation, loss of life, and economic damage, making them a significant threat to human societies. One such potentially devastating earthquake is dubbed the Big One, which is alarming the citizens around the globe. But there's an even more dangerous one coming, far worse than this. Join us as we reveal the ultimate disaster that is about to come, and it is much more severe and deadly than the Big One. What exactly is the Big One? From numerous geological records, we already know that the Earth is made up of a composite of tectonic plates that continuously move alongside each other like pieces of a giant puzzle. However, aside from the main plates, which are 20 in number, there are also smaller mics and plates. The areas or regions where the tectonic plates come into contact with each other are known as subduction zones, where the smaller plates try to avoid colliding with the larger ones by diving beneath them. Many areas affected by these faults, like Chile and Japan, have been hit by devastating earthquakes. Another area, California, is crossed by the San Andreas Fault and is often said to be in danger of suffering the consequences of a potentially fearsome future earthquake known as the Big One. The Big One earthquake is a 7.8 magnitude or higher quake that struck California. It is 44 times stronger than the magnitude 6.7 Northridge earthquake of 1994, which caused 72 deaths, about 9,000 injuries, and an estimated $25 billion in damage in Southern California. No one can predict when the next massive earthquake, the Big One, will rock Southern California. But new research suggests it might be sooner than we previously thought. Disaster preparedness experts worry that Californians are underprepared for a colossal quake, particularly regarding insurance. However, it is said that this Big One is nothing compared to what could soon unleash in a stretch of coastline located north of California, the area dominated by the Cascade Range. If you think the Big One is fearsome enough, you can also just forget about it, because there is something more fearsome. The earthquake that could cause unspeakable damages. Most people worldwide, not just in the United States, know only one fault line, the San Andreas. This fault line runs nearly the length of California and is perpetually rumored to be on the verge of unleashing the Big One. That rumor is misleading, however, no matter what San Andreas ever does. Every fault line has an upper limit to its potency, determined by its length and width and how far it can slip. For the San Andreas, one of the most extensively studied and best understood fault lines in the world, that upper limit is roughly 8.2, a powerful earthquake, but because the Richter scale is logarithmic, it is only 6% as strong as the 2011 event in Japan. Just north of the San Andreas, however, lies another fault line. Known as the Cascadia subduction zone, it runs for 700 miles off the coast of the Pacific Northwest, beginning near Cape Mendocino, California, continuing along Oregon and Washington, and terminating around Vancouver Island, Canada. The Cascadia part of the name Cascadia subduction zone comes from the Cascade Range, a chain of volcanic mountains following the same course 100 miles inland. The subduction zone part refers to a region of the planet where one tectonic plate is sliding underneath another. Tectonic plates are those slabs of mantle and crust that, in their epic long drift, rearrange the Earth's continents and oceans. Most of the time, their movement is slow, harmless, and all but undetectable. Occasionally, at the borders where they meet, it is not. In the Pacific Northwest, the area of impact will cover some 140,000 square miles, including Seattle, Tacoma, Portland, Eugene, Salem, the capital city of Oregon, Olympia, the capital of Washington, and some 7 million people. When the next full margin rupture happens, that region will suffer the worst natural disaster in the history of North America, outside of the 2010 Haiti earthquake, which killed upward of 100,000 people. By comparison, roughly 3,000 people died in San Francisco's 1906 earthquake. Almost 2,000 people died in Hurricane Katrina. Almost 300 people died in Hurricane Sandy. FEMA projects that nearly 13,000 people will die in the Cascadia earthquake and tsunami. Another 27,000 people will be injured, and the agency expects that it will need to provide shelter for 1 million displaced people, as well as food and water for another 2.5 million. Experts have explained that 90% of these chilling earthquakes occur along the Ring of Fire, the terrifying Ring of Fire. 30 years ago, no one knew that the Cascadia subduction zone had ever produced a major earthquake. 45 years ago, no one even knew it existed. In May 1804, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark and their Corps of Discovery set off from St. Louis on America's first official cross-country expedition. 18 months later, they reached the Pacific Ocean and made camp near the present-day town of Astoria, Oregon. The United States was 29 years old at the time, and Canada was not yet a country. The continent's far expanses were so unknown to its white explorers that Thomas Jefferson, who commissioned the journey, thought the men would come across woolly mammoths. Native Americans had lived in the Northwest for millennia, but they had no written language, and the many things to which the arriving Europeans subjected them did not include seismological inquiries. The newcomers took the land they encountered at face value, and at face value, it was a find. Vast, cheap, temperate, fertile, and to all appearances, remarkably benign. A century and a half elapsed before anyone had any inkling that the Pacific Northwest was not a quiet place, but a place in a long period of quiet. Uncovering and interpreting the region's seismic history took another 50 years. Geology, as even geologists will tell you, is not normally the sexiest of disciplines. It hunkers down with earthly stuff while the glory accrues to the human and the cosmic. Genetics, neuroscience, and physics. But sooner or later, every field has its field day. And discovering the Cascadia subduction zone is one of our time's greatest scientific detective stories. The first clue came from geography. Almost all of the world's most powerful earthquakes occur in the Ring of Fire, the volcanically and seismically volatile swath of the Pacific that runs from New Zealand up through Indonesia and Japan, across the ocean to Alaska, and down the west coast of the Americas to Chile. Japan, 2011, magnitude 9.0, Indonesia, 2004, magnitude 9.1, Alaska, 1964, magnitude 9.2, Chile, 1960, magnitude 9.5, not until the late 1960s, with the rise of the theory of plate tectonics. Could geologists explain this pattern? It turns out that the Ring of Fire is a ring of subduction zones. Nearly all the regional earthquakes are caused by continental plates getting stuck on oceanic plates, as North America is stuck on Juan de Fuca, and then abruptly unstuck. Nearly all the volcanoes are caused by the oceanic plates sliding deep beneath the continental ones, eventually reaching temperatures and pressures so extreme that they melt the rock above them. The Pacific Northwest sits squarely within the Ring of Fire. Off its coast, an oceanic plate is slipping beneath a continental one. Inland, the Cascade volcanoes mark the line where, far below, the Juan de Fuca plate is heating up and melting everything above it. Some scientists believe that with all the potential of the Cascadia subduction zone, it has not once in recorded history caused a major earthquake, or, for that matter, any quake to speak of. By contrast, other subduction zones produce major earthquakes occasionally, and minor ones all the time. Magnitude 5.0, magnitude 4.0, and magnitude. Why are the neighbors moving their sofa at midnight? You can scarcely spend a week in Japan without feeling some sort of earthquake. There was once a massive wave that devastated the coast. The wave was clearly from a tsunami, but the origin of that tsunami was unknown, so much so that it was recorded in ancient chronicles as the orphaned tsunami, meaning without a cause. Only after several years, in 1996, was it discovered that the tsunami was caused by a magnitude 9.0 earthquake that occurred in North America on January 26, 1700. You can spend a lifetime in many parts of the Northwest and not feel so much as a quiver, and this has made geologists question if an earthquake has ever happened in the Cascadia subduction zone. Has the Cascadia subduction zone ever witnessed an earthquake? It is all thanks to the evidence that the devastating waves in Japan were caused by an earthquake that happened in North America in 1700, that it was discovered that some Native American tribes have also maintained and passed down the memory of that event. Their stories then referred to the shaking of the earth or immense waves from the ocean. They were believed to be legends, but in fact, they were accounts. From the written Japanese sources as well as the unwritten sources of the Native Americans, we are now aware with reasonable certainty and clarity that at 9 p.m. on January 26, 1700, one of the greatest earthquakes the world had ever witnessed was along the western coast of North America. The Cascadia Fault disintegrates along its entire length, producing tremendous tremors and huge tsunamis sweeping across the Pacific to Southeast Asia. The 1700 Cascadia earthquake occurred along the Cascadia subduction zone on January 26, 1700, with an estimated moment magnitude of 8.7 to 9.2. The megathrust earthquake involved the Juan de Fuca Plate from mid-Vancouver Island, south along the Pacific Northwest coast and Northern California. The plate slipped an average of 20 meters along a fault rupture about 1,000 kilometers long. The earthquake caused a tsunami that struck the west coast of North America and the coast of Japan. Japanese tsunami records and reconstructions of the wave moving across the ocean put the earthquake at about 9 p.m. Pacific time on the evening of January 26, 1700. Although there are no written records for the region at the time, the timing of the earthquake has been inferred from Japanese records of a tsunami that does not correlate with any other Pacific Rim quake. The Japanese records exist primarily in modern-day Iwate Prefecture, in communities such as Tsugaruishi, Miyako, and Otsuchi. The earthquake collapsed the houses of the Cowichan people on Vancouver Island and caused numerous landslides. The shaking was so violent that people could not stand, and so prolonged that it made them sick. On the west coast of Vancouver Island, the tsunami completely destroyed the winter village of the Pachina Bay people, leaving no survivors. These events are recorded in the oral traditions of the First Nations people on Vancouver Island. The tsunami swept across the Pacific, also causing destruction along the Pacific coast of Japan. The accurate descriptions of the tsunami and the accurate timekeeping by the Japanese allow us to confidently know the size and exact time of this great earthquake. The earthquake also left unmistakable signatures in the geological record as the outer coastal regions subsided and drowned coastal marshlands and forests that were subsequently covered with younger sediments. The recognition of definitive signatures in the geological record tells us that the January 26, 1700 event was not unique, but repeated many times at irregular intervals of hundreds of years. Geological evidence indicates that 13 great earthquakes have occurred in the last 6,000 years. Recognizing definitive evidence in geological documentation makes us understand that it was not a unique event, but rather a disaster that has repeated itself one too many times at regular intervals of 100 years. According to geological evidence, 41 earthquakes have occurred in the Cascadia region in the last 10,000 years. As to how this is known, when a strong earthquake happens in open water, the upheaval causes mud and sand to begin to flow along continental margins and into submarine canyons. In the abyssal plain, coarse sediments called turbidites flow. These sediments are distinguished from the fine particulate matter that accumulates regularly between tectonic events. Dating the fine particles through carbon-14 analysis and other methods allows scientists to estimate with significant precision when major earthquakes occurred in the last 10,000 years. When 10,000 is divided by 41, it gives 241, the recurrence interval of earthquakes in Cascadia, the average number of years between one earthquake. Definitely, these earthquakes have had a massive impact on the environment, but just how big will the coming earthquake be? Potential damage to be caused by the big one. It has been over 300 years since the 1700 event. During this time, stress has been building between the plates. Evidence suggests it may be a short time before the next great earthquake shakes the region. We are still determining when that will happen. It could be tomorrow or many years from now. It could be a magnitude 9.0 full rip or a partial rupture, maybe a magnitude of 8+. Either would have significant impacts. Given the uncertainty, it is extremely important to understand the potential impacts of a Cascadia earthquake and any resulting tsunami, and to prepare for them. Emergency managers are planning an event similar to the 1700 earthquake and tsunami, as described in a scenario document from the Cascadia Region Earthquake Workgroup. This scenario assumes, according to estimates, the earthquake will be felt throughout the Pacific Northwest. Shaking will last for 4 to 6 minutes. The coast will subside approximately 6 feet, and a tsunami will reach the coast in 15 to 30 minutes in some locations. The height of the tsunami will vary along the coast, depending on local bathymetry and topography. It may be as high as 30 to 40 feet in some places. The subsidence caused by the earthquake and the tide will also affect wave heights. Waves of varying heights will continue for hours, and the first may not be the largest. Flooding and dangerous currents may last for days. Additional hazards like liquefaction, when soil liquefies during shaking, landslides, fires, dam failures, and hazardous material spills are also likely. Should the earthquake and tsunami happen shortly, they could affect millions of people, property, infrastructure, and the environment. According to the crew scenario, it is estimated that more than 10,000 people may lose their lives. More than 30,000 people could be injured, and economic losses could approximate $70 billion for Washington, Oregon, and California alone. Since most construction in the region was not designed to survive earthquakes, much less tsunamis, buildings will be damaged and destroyed, and businesses will be crippled. Impacts on important infrastructure associated with transportation networks, communications, utilities, energy networks, and public health and medical systems will be significant. Many will be left homeless, and relief for coastal communities will be complicated and may take weeks. Basic services like electricity, water, and communications will be disrupted for long periods. The tsunami will travel across the Pacific and bring flooding and strong currents to coastal communities throughout the basin, from Alaska to as far away as Japan and the islands in between. Because it will take more time for the tsunami to reach these coasts, there will be more time for them to prepare and get to safety, and the impacts should not be as severe as those experienced in the Cascadia region. These earthquakes would be like history repeating itself. What are some of the deadliest earthquakes witnessed by man? History of the greatest recorded earthquakes. One of the greatest earthquakes in recorded history is the Great Chilean Earthquake of 1960. According to the United States Geological Survey, the 1960 Valdivia earthquake, also known as the Great Chilean Earthquake, was the strongest earthquake ever recorded. It hit Valdivia town in southern Chile on May 22, 1960, and its magnitude was measured at a whopping 9.5. The earthquake also spawned a deadly tsunami, which took the combined count of deaths to an estimated 5,700 in Chile alone. The calamity left around 2 million people homeless and caused damage worth about $550 million. The tsunami afterward claimed 61 lives in Hawaii, 2 on the U.S. West Coast, and 139 in Japan, according to the National Centers for Environmental Information. Also, the Great Alaska Earthquake of 1964 was measured at 9.2 magnitude. It is believed to be the second most powerful earthquake to hit a region. It is also known as the Prince William Sound and Good Friday earthquakes. It struck southern Alaska in the U.S. on March 27, 1964, and lasted for about 4 minutes, causing widespread damage, especially in the Alaskan capital of Anchorage. According to reports, some 115 people were lost due to the earthquake. The 2004 Sumatra-Andaman Islands earthquake, also known as the Indian Ocean earthquake, struck off the west coast of northern Sumatra and is said to be the deadliest earthquake in recorded history. Its magnitude was 9.1. The tremors triggered a tsunami that claimed more than 240,000 lives in 14 South and Southeast Asian countries. Japan is no stranger to earthquakes. The 2011 Tohoku earthquake was among the worst. On March 11, 2011, Japan was rocked by a powerful undersea earthquake that hit below the North Pacific, some 130 kilometers east of Sendai City in the Tohoku region. The quake caused a tsunami, creating huge waves up to 40 meters. According to National Geographic, more than 15,500 people were lost, and over 450,000 became homeless as a result of the disaster. That's not all. The Kamchatka earthquake also hit Russia in 1952. This 9.0 magnitude earthquake resulted in the Kamchatka tsunami on November 4, 1952, in East Russia. The waves created by it measured as high as 50 feet and caused extensive damage to the Kamchatka Peninsula and the Kuril Islands. It claimed the lives of about 15,000 people. Now, we know that earthquakes, even without tsunamis, are very dangerous and can throw people into misery. But how about great tsunamis that can go as far as tumbling and burying buildings? Let's look at some of the greatest revised tsunamis in history. What are the greatest tsunamis ever recorded? When the 2004 tsunami hit South Asia, most people were unprepared. Tsunamis weren't as common in the Indian Ocean as in the Pacific, and there wasn't a warning system in place, so it was always a surprise. Tsunamis have long devastated coastal areas and continue to be a threat in many parts of the world. 2 of the most devastating tsunamis have occurred in the last 2 decades. Here are 5 of the worst tsunamis in history. The Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami of December 26, 2004, is one of the greatest. It affected 13 countries. On the morning of the tsunami, Sonali Dhiraniyagala was vacationing with her family on the Sri Lankan coast. From her hotel room, she saw threatening tidal waves crash against the beach. Her family fled and were picked up by a driver in an SUV. They were hit by the water moments later. Only Dhiraniyagala survived. She lost her husband, 2 sons, parents, and best friend. The 2004 tsunami was the deadliest on record. It was caused by a 9.1 magnitude earthquake that occurred 18 miles below the ocean floor between the Burma and Indian plates. The force caused an 800-mile-long rupture and a tsunami that spread everywhere. The coast of Indonesia was one of the first areas hit with waves larger than 150 feet. The last tsunami slammed Africa's coast hours later with 30-foot waves. The force of the massive waves leveled buildings and, in some places, caused flooding as far as 3 miles inland. More than 1 million people were displaced, and the loss from the devastation was estimated at $13 billion. Then there's the Lisbon earthquake and tsunami of November 1st, 1755. People traveled from the Portuguese countryside to Lisbon for All Saints' Day. By mid-morning, crowds gathered in churches, and the streets were livelier than usual. But trouble was brewing in the Atlantic Ocean. Shifting near the southwest Iberian margin led to an 8.5 magnitude earthquake that was felt as far away as Germany. The buildings in Lisbon shook, and survivors described hearing a horrible subterranean noise. The city rocked from tremors for the next hour. Many buildings were reduced to rubble, and survivors were sorting out the chaos when the tsunami hit. The death toll for the city was estimated to be around 30,000 people. Some scholars have argued the estimate was too low because bodies were removed from the city without being counted. The tsunami produced waves between 19 and 50 feet that crashed into the Portuguese, Spanish, and Moroccan coastlines, killing as many as 10,000 people in those areas. Damages were estimated to be as high as 48% of the Portuguese GDP. Earthquakes aren't the only things that cause tsunamis. Volcanic eruptions are also culprits. The eruption of the Krakatau volcano on August 27, 1883, is one of the for many months. Sailors reported seeing activity from the Krakatau volcano on an Indonesian island between Sumatra and Java. The volcano finally erupted in late August in a series of early morning explosions. Each time the volcano exploded, hot gas and volcanic matter called pyroclastic flow burst into the ocean. The force from these pyroclastic flows formed tsunamis that slammed into nearby islands. For hours, coastal villages endured multiple 100-foot tsunamis. In Java, the 2,700-person town of Merak was completely decimated. 2 people survived, the rest drowned. Survivors of the tsunamis recalled seeing massive walls of water speeding toward the shore. By the time the waves receded, more than 300 coastal towns and their inhabitants had been washed away. A tsunami also rocked Arica after an earthquake on August 13, 1868, on a Thursday afternoon. People living near the borders of Peru and Chile felt foreshocks. They knew an earthquake was coming, and many were safely outside when an 8.5 magnitude earthquake struck around 4:30 p.m. People near the sea watched as the water rose and receded, exposing more than a mile of seabed. Then, a tsunami more than 50 feet tall crashed onto the shore, and the waves kept coming. The second wave was more than 90 feet tall, and little survived the earthquake, and the first wave was battered again. The port town of Arica was destroyed, and one historian described survivors as lost in the aftermath, surrounded by suffering. Other coastal towns in Peru and Chile were also wiped away. Inland towns, including those in Bolivia, were also impacted. Besides the loss of life and the devastation of complete towns, the tsunami also wrecked many ships docked at the coastal port towns. 2 U.S. Navy ships were in the Arica port when the tsunami hit. One carried $2 million worth of supplies, and the ship and cargo were lost in the wave. As mentioned earlier, Japan and earthquakes are synonymous. The Tohoku earthquake of March 11, 2011, wasn't only one of the greatest earthquakes, but also one of the greatest tsunamis. After the great earthquake that rocked Japan that afternoon, people feared a tsunami would follow. Students and faculty assembled in the courtyard at Okawa Elementary School in Ishinomaki City. Some wondered if they should seek higher ground, and others worried about a potential landslide. After 40 minutes, the faculty and students departed. The tsunami finally hit while they evacuated. 74 students and 10 teachers died. The disaster started under the ocean floor with a collision between the Pacific and North American plates, which led to a 9.1 magnitude earthquake. Almost all of Japan felt the rumbles of the earthquake. Soon, 1,200 miles of Japan's coastline felt the impact of a 130-foot tsunami. In the coastal town of Okuma, the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant lost power. Emergency generators were flooded, and the plant's 3 reactors cooled and released radiation. The town was quickly evacuated, and the incident was considered the worst nuclear disaster in decades. In addition to the people evacuated from Okuma, more than 130,000 people were displaced by the tsunami, and the total economic loss was estimated to be $309 billion. However, as research has shown, none of these are comparable to the Cascadia earthquake, which is expected to hit North America in the future. What are your thoughts about this potentially really big earthquake? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe to see more videos.